So I get quite a few questions about the installation and how to go about doing it. And what I tell most of the customers is I find these spring clamps to be very handy in positioning it right where you want it. In this case, these spring clamps aren't deep enough to reach from the back. That's how I would typically do it, is reach from the back and clamp the 511 insert to the factory guard to position it where I want it. But in this case, due to the clamps being too short, I just put a clamp on the factory guard under each ear to position the height. So that's the first step, is position it where you want it, where you get the most protection down below, and also line up the headlights. So to start, after I have it aligned exactly where I want, what I tell people also is I mark and drill the upper holes first, and don't worry about the lower holes. Just put the bolts in the top and leave the bolts still a little bit loose so you can adjust it for the bottom. But that way it's a lot easier than trying to mark and drill 4 holes and get them all to line up. So I have this position where I want, so I'm going to tilt this forward just to give myself a little bit more room. And the upper tabs on these and the lower have kind of an oval, so you get a little bit more adjustment there. So I'm going to trace the oval on the inside of the factory guard and then do a center punch right in the center of that to give me some adjustment. So now I'm just going to rotate this upper guard out a little bit just to get a little more room. And I'm going to drill with a pilot drill before going to the full size of a 3/8 drill. So I'm going to just start drilling, and then I'm going to add some oil to assist in this drilling and to keep it a little cooler. Pretty much any oil will work. Cutting fluid is probably the best thing, but any oil is going to help with this process. Remember, the smaller the bit, the higher speed you do. So when I go to the 3/8 bit, I generally slow down to low speed. So now I've moved up to my 3/8 bit, which should be the finished size. The bolts themselves are 3/8, so should be just perfect. So now that we have the upper 2 holes drilled, I'm going to just loosely put these bolts in place on the upper. So now that we have the upper 2 bolts in place, that allows us to rotate this in and out a little bit to kind of fine tune it. So I try to get this either just behind the front edge or as flush as possible here, as far as in and out. But then I also don't want it contacting this crossbar, so I'll just move it out slightly. So now I'm going to pivot it down just to give me a little more room for marking the lower holes. So now that the lower holes are marked, I'm going to pivot this back up a little bit, take these clamps off, and then remove these nuts from the upper bolts. Oops. And just push these bolts out. And now we're going to center punch the lower holes like we did the uppers, right in the center of that oval. So now we have all 4 holes drilled. I'm going to set this in place and install the 2 upper bolts to start with. Tilt this out for a little easier access. Put the washers next to the tab before installing the nuts. You don't have to go crazy with tightening these. These are lock nuts with a nylon insert, so they shouldn't come apart. So there you go. That's all there is to it. Marking accurately, starting with the top, getting those in, then moving to the bottom. Everything lines up very easily and it's ready to go.